Hey everyone, and welcome to my new home theatre. Got here, those of you who are subscribers to the channel will recognize the fact that this room has changed quite a bit since I last uploaded, and one of the reasons why it's been so long since I last uploaded was because of the amount of work that I've had to do in such a short period of time. I have actually been looking at increasing the size of the screen in this particular room, and ultra short throws was kind of the route that I was looking to go. However, I wasn't actually planning on doing this until probably towards November time at the earliest. It just so happened that I actually found a really good deal on the projector that I was actually looking at, hence why I actually went for it whilst I had the opportunity to actually get it at a big discount, and ended up having to rush this room somewhat to try and get everything finished. So then we're getting as best a sort of performance out of the projector as we possibly can. So firstly, what we'll do is we'll just quickly go through the actual hardware itself. So what we have here is the Hisense L9G. This is a 3 laser projector, so trichroma they call it, and they badge it as a laser TV because it has a built-in TV tuner. I have the UK or Europe version, which I will actually do a review on the projector in a separate video, which does actually change things quite a bit. Not necessarily that much for me personally because of my setup, but for anybody else out there that's potentially in UK or Europe who are looking at this particular projector or one very similar to it, that video will help quite a bit in terms of making up your mind in terms of whether you want to actually go for this particular one or go for something else. So I opted for the 120 L9G. So the L9G, the Hisense L9G, only comes in 2 sizes. So it comes in 100 and 120, and the projector comes paired with the actual screen size that you choose. So for example, if you choose the 100-inch, then that particular projector's focus, it's a fixed focus, and it will only work with that particular size of screen. I went for the 120 because when I was looking at everything, I decided that if I'm going to get a projector, I may as well just go all out, and I don't want to regret not buying the big enough, the biggest size somewhere down the line. This particular one is the 120 L9G, and as you can see, it's paired with the 120-inch screen. I did set up the screen myself. It's not that hard. There's plenty of videos on YouTube that you can actually watch. I think the one that I actually used was Youthman's channel, Youthman, who basically does home cinemas and tours and things like that, and his particular video was really helpful for me because whilst it's not exactly the same screen, so the 120-inch screen is slightly different in the sense that the longest piece actually comes as 2 pieces. So on the 100-inch, your sides and your height as well as your width is all one. On this particular screen, you do have to build that additionally, which is a few extra steps, but I would say it wasn't really that difficult at all. So coming on to the actual screen itself, this is a 120-inch ALR, or probably more accurately a CLR screen. So ALR stands for ambient light rejecting, and CLR is ceiling light rejecting. So as you can see, it does a pretty decent job in terms of rejecting light from the top, but anything from the side, it can't necessarily do as good a job. Now this particular screen is a 0.4 gain, so that means it's actually reducing the light output of whatever you project onto it by 60%. And the main reason for that is because these particular projectors, most of them are going to be DLP projectors. They generally suffer quite badly with black levels. So black levels are quite raised, and basically blacks generally tend to look more grey as opposed to being actual blacks. Me coming from an OLED TV, I was quite worried about how I would actually handle the blacks and whether I'd be able to live with it or not. But thankfully, I can actually confirm what more or less everybody else out there also pretty much said, which was once you get a screen size this big, and just for context, as you can see, it is absolutely massive. It fills the entire wall pretty much in this particular room, which is basically the perfect size that I could have actually got for this particular room. But once you go this big, you kind of forget about all of the sort of negatives. There are a lot of negatives, and as I said, I will mention all of those in a separate video. But in this video, I just wanted to give an overview in terms of what the setup is, what the current setup is, and potentially what I may be looking at further down the line as well. So a 0.4 gain screen, which does an okay job. As I said, because of the amount of light control I actually have in this room, it means that I can actually use it like this whenever we're just using it casually, but whenever we want to watch anything serious like a movie, TV show, any sporting events, anything like that, I can black this room out quite easily. And obviously the new black walls and ceiling mean that it does become pitch black. One of the reasons I did the black walls was with ultra short throws in particular, you do get a little bit of overshoot. Now at the moment I've actually got some LEDs around the screen as well as in other places throughout the room as well that I've got turned on just to give that sort of movie theatre vibe. But whenever we're watching something generally, I'll turn those off. But you do actually get quite a lot of reflection off the screen itself. So for that reason, you want to try and make the room as dark as possible. Any reflected light will also wash out the screen as well. So if you want the most pop from your picture, then you want as dark or as light controlled room as possible. Okay, so coming below the actual screen itself, we do have the LG SN11RG soundbar. So this particular soundbar is a 5.1. The whole setup is 7.1.4. The soundbar itself has a center channel, a left, a right. It has side firing speakers as well as two Atmos speakers on the top as well. Just down in that corner down there, I have the actual subwoofer itself. That's where I used to actually keep it before. What I may do is whenever we're watching a movie, I may just pull it out just to give more direct actual bass. It's kind of cordoned off in that corner at the moment, which I've not really tested it with any actual full-length movies, but the few tests that I have run, it's okay. I am getting a little bit of booming reflection in this corner just behind the camera itself, so I do need to do something with regards to sound deadening the room. I have had new carpet fitted as well as there being a rug in this area as well, so in terms of echo it did actually pretty much go away as soon as we put everything back into this room. But in terms of sound reflection, there is still quite a bit that needs to be done. Now I can't actually do anything with the side walls or the ceiling itself because of the way that these Atmos speakers work. Because they're up firing speakers, I need that reflection to actually happen. So I can't actually do anything with the sides as well as the ceiling. However, that back wall behind where the camera is now can actually get some soundproofing, some sound deadening, some sound absorption essentially, and in particular that back corner, because we do get a lot of rebound in that back corner itself. Now the soundbar, it was a little tricky working out how high you can actually mount it, because obviously with this being an ultra short throw, it's essentially projecting the image up this way. So as you can see, until I actually get that close, I'm not actually blocking the image at all. However, obviously if I did mount this too high, then it would obviously end up blocking some of the image just at the bottom. Just whilst we're talking about the actual projector itself, in terms of getting it set up and everything, I was kind of worried that it would be difficult in terms of actually getting it to line up, and then also having it set up in such a way where you're not going to end up bumping it and getting it thrown off, or have a few corners that aren't quite lining up. Once again, because the screen size is so big, that's not something that you actually end up caring about too much. Initially when I set it up, there was a tiny little slither in that bottom corner, just because the walls aren't quite straight, and essentially the screen itself is being pulled around on that particular side just ever so slightly. So that bottom corner isn't quite in line. I could fix that with keystone, but I would rather have maximum resolution without having to keystone. The built-in keystone, it works really well. So what you do is you get it lined up as best as possible, and then all you do is you take a photo of the screen once it's actually set up, and it automatically kind of pulls the image in just a tiny bit. Now you can do this quite severely, so you can actually have it overshoot quite a bit and then have it pull in, but I prefer to actually get it as close as possible using just the actual projector itself. That way I'm not keystoning and I'm not losing resolution that way. Right, just coming behind where the camera is right now, so this is where we have our two rear speakers. Just in that corner there, you might be able able to see it. It's quite dark. Just here you can see we have one of the speakers. Now that one's actually angling in quite nicely, because obviously being a corner, I can actually angle that one in and get it to focus. There we go. With this particular one, because this is quite close to my seating position, I've actually had this one fire straight forward as opposed to angling it in. If I angle this one in, even when I do reduce the volume on it, the gain on it, it will still be more prominent than the right rear, and all you will hear is just your left rear and your left rear Atmos overpower everything else. So by having this one fire forwards, it just means it helps to balance out the any of the rear sound as well as the Atmos sound as well. Now, just as I'm panning around, you may have noticed that I have also added some ambient light just underneath all of the sort of seating in this particular room. The seating is something that I do want to actually upgrade at some point, but as I mentioned at the start of this video, this room's kind of been rushed. The plan wasn't to do this until later in the year, probably around October, November time at the very earliest. So the fact that I've kind of had to rush everything together, I knew I was going to be reusing the same seating. Pretty much most of the kit that's in here was going to end up getting reused, and because of that I wanted to at least do a little bit of an upgrade in terms of just the look, the fit and finish of everything. So all I did was I just added some very simple LED strips to all three settees or sofas in here, and it's all linked up to the actual screen itself. Now with regards to the screen itself, I can actually have separate colors on the left and right, but generally I tend to actually keep it on the same color. And in this particular room, what I tend to find is that the blue generally looks the best. It has the most pop. I've probably mounted the LEDs on the screen itself in the wrong position if you wanted to get the brightest light reflection, but basically I didn't want to just have the LEDs shining all around the screen. I wanted it to shine back and then out. So obviously if I had lighter walls, this would probably show a bit better, but as it is, you can still see it. Okay, so here you can see with all the sort of curtains drawn and a much more controlled light environment, you can now see that the screen does pop a lot more. Now at the moment I believe I've got it hooked up to my Apple TV and I've got it running in Dolby Vision, so all of these will be Dolby Vision screensavers. Obviously it will still run in HDR, and that's one of the good things about using the Apple TV, because no matter what you throw at it, it will kind of figure out what it can play, what it can't play, and it will just convert. So this is basically what it looks like in HDR mode, and if I just flick through some of these, you'll be able to see the differences in terms of shadow detail. Try and find a darker one. Yeah, so here, as you can see, if I just kind of kill the LEDs, as you can see, so all of this sort of area down here, it doesn't ever get pure black, but by having the 0.4 gain screen, it does mean that you are getting a slightly better image in terms of any of your darker areas on screen. Even in the top right hand corner, as you can see, that it's never going to be perfectly black, but to be honest, like even when I've done test sort of samples and stuff of movie clips, anytime I've come to any scenes, because you are looking at such a big screen, you kind of forget about the fact that it's not perfect blacks and you don't really care as much. The colors I've not quite got set in any modes. SDR, the picture profiles that are on it are pretty good. They were quite easy to actually dial in and get to the point where I would be happy with watching TV shows, movies, those kind of things, and also just general sports. With the HDR, I kind of find myself going between different modes depending on the movie itself. So some movies I'll find that one particular mode, I've set it up, I've got it dialed in, it looks good, it looks natural whilst also having a decent amount of pop. And then all of a sudden I'll switch to a different movie and it just looks either overblown, blown out completely, or it will just look really flat in comparison to the previous one. So HDR for me, I think I still need to have a little play about with it, get it to set up in the way that I actually want it to. But when you've got a screen this big and it's this immersive, you kind of forget about any small sort of deficiencies. As I mentioned, I will highlight all of the problems with all of this setup, including my current audio setup, including the projector, including the screen itself. None of this is perfect, but considering the budget that I was actually working to and what I've actually got here, I think I've actually made something that's really, really immersive and something that's gonna benefit my family in terms of our movie watching time. Generally, we tend to try and watch a movie every Friday, and with all of this sort of Disney Plus content that is coming out over the next couple of years with Marvel, with Star Wars, I just wanted something bigger that was actually a bit more like the cinema experience. The one downside of having a lot of the streaming services nowadays is the fact that that content doesn't then come on cinemas. So if I had the option, I would watch everything on the big screen, but any of the Disney Plus series, they're not going to be coming on the big screen. So you have the option of either watching on a smaller screen, maybe something like an OLED, and get perfect picture where it absolutely pops off the screen, or you have the big screen and maybe not as perfect blacks, not unless you're paying really big money for a projector and a screen that basically I wasn't really looking to do. This is something that, considering the budget I've worked to, is still relatively affordable. I wouldn't say this is something that everybody out there can do or would be willing to do, but for the sort of payoff that you get in terms of the best bang for buck, I think this is something that is really, really good. And as I say, if anybody's out there has any questions about ultra short throw projectors, how you set it up, your distances, your height, sort of minimum requirements, all these kind of things, drop them down in the comment section below and I'll do my best to answer them. I will have more videos coming on all of this, the screen, the projector, the audio setup, any of the little niggles, all the problems that I had, and also if anybody's interested in the whole setup videos, I might do a time lapse of that as well. It was quite long, it did take about 4.5 hours to do, simply because I was working with my son and we just took our time. We weren't in a rush, we didn't want to rush that particular part, so we didn't have any issues, we didn't run into any problems, but we just took our time and we made sure that we didn't damage anything in the process. The biggest stumbling block for me, I think, with the mounting was the actual brackets themselves, simply because the walls in this particular room are so wavy, as well as the fact that they kind of crumble away on you. Once you drill into them, you have to be really careful how you're drilling in. Being solid brick, if it doesn't go in perfectly straight, it kind of crumbles away, and then your fixing isn't going in straight, so you can never get things dialed in and actually level the way that you actually want them to. But as you can see, I mean, I'm blown away by this particular picture. We have done a tiny little bit of gaming on this particular projector as well. Initially we did go through the soundbar to enable the best audio, but then the lag that we were getting meant that connecting the PS4 Pro directly to the projector made it better. It's obviously it's never going to be in the realms of an OLED TV, but considering the size of the screen that we're getting here, I don't think we could have got anything close and still maintain those sort of good gaming performances in games such as Call of Duty or anything like that. FIFA, things like that, they're a lot more manageable. Anything first person shooter, I don't think this is ideal for it. Yes, you can do it, but I don't think it'd be as enjoyable, in particular if you've had an OLED and you've been used to that almost instantaneous input lag and response time. Then something like this is going to feel very slow and very laggy. Okay, so just one last thing that I wanted to actually show you just before we sort of wrap up this particular video, and that is a new switch that I've actually installed. So this particular one is just for the ceiling light, so that just turns the normal light on and off. This is a smart switch. It is linked up to my Aqara smart hub, and that actually links into HomeKit as well. But next to that, I've actually got the Aqara switch. I can't remember the actual name of this, but basically you have three options. You have your single click, you have a double click, and you have the hold. Now the single click, if you just look down there, you'll notice that when I single click this, I've set it up so then anybody can come into this room and turn on the LEDs and turn them off using just that one particular button. The other thing that I wanted to think about when I was actually doing this was, what are people going to benefit from by having this switch? So the second option is double click, and if I just come over here, you'll notice that that actually sets the thermostat to turn on. So when we're in this particular particular room, I can choose a particular temperature and set the temperature to that, and then every time we double click it, it'll turn it on. And then if I double click it again, as you can see, it has now turned it off. So that's the double click. The long press, I haven't really decided what the outcome of the long press is going to be just yet, but once I've figured something out for that, then hopefully I'll do a little update and see, give you guys an idea in terms of how you can actually use it. The final thing is, yeah, because I was rushing, you may have noticed on this particular door, as well as a few other little spots in the room, the paint, I've had to do a few little patching jobs. This particular door, I'm just simply not happy with the finish on the actual door itself. Because the carpet was so thick, I've almost had to cut off about 8-9 mil off the bottom of the door, and in that process basically it got scratched up, and essentially I want to just sand this down completely. If I come in at this sort of angle, you might be able to see how much of a grain I've got on there from previous paint. So previously when this door was white, obviously it's had a lot of paint jobs over the years, and it simply wasn't finishing how I wanted it to. So that door hopefully will come off and I'll be redoing that. There's also a few little bits and bobs around the skirting boards. Once the carpets were fitted, basically they've managed to scratch up some of the paintwork, as well as around the sides as well. But for the most part, I think most of the sort of cabling down here, I have got some trunking, cable trunking, that's basically hiding most of it. And then anywhere where we've got a bunch of cables, I've also put some sleeving on them, so then they're nice and tidy. Blacked everything out to try and keep as much focus on the actual screen itself. And if I just come down here, this would be my seating position. Ideally I would have wanted the screen to be a little bit lower, but the only way to achieve that is to actually lower the main projector itself. Now in theory, yeah, I could build something and have the projector even lower, and then I've got the option of actually dropping the screen down. The only caveat to that would be you don't really want to be mounting the projector too low either, because obviously if I just come near it, while it's not particularly loud, it does have fans built in, obviously in order to keep it cool. And one of the things that you'll probably find if you mount it too low is you're going to end up with a lot of dust build up. And even right now, I mean, if I stand at this angle, you should be able to see the sparkles where the laser is actually going through dust. And it's just natural, you're always going to have dust in the room, but you don't want too much dust build up on the actual projector itself. So the lower you mount it, the more dust build up or pickup you're going to get just from the fans actually sucking in air, trying to cool the projector. So it's not ideal, but where everything is at the moment, I'm not too unhappy with how it is right now. So this is probably how I would end up keeping it for the time being, at least, until I actually come up with something, some sort of other system where I know for a fact that, yeah, I can get everything lower and not compromise on anything. Then I think for now this is a pretty decent setup and it works well enough. Once the seating is replaced, ideally what I want to do is go down the route of cinema seating. Then naturally they're going to raise up, so your seating position will be higher, and as a result obviously the middle of the screen will hit more with the level looking straight on, as well as obviously having headrests, head support, things like that. It can actually make it a little bit better. The other slight problem I have with this particular screen is normally you are meant to put a little bit of Velcro on the bottom in order to pull it back. Now on this particular wall, because it is kicking out so much, even if I did put the Velcro on, it wouldn't actually take it back very much. So essentially the screen is angling either just straight or slightly further back at the top, and that's obviously losing a little bit of the sort of ideal reflection. At the moment when I'm stood up is probably where ideally you want to actually be, but with an ultra short throw that's probably not something that most people are going to be able to achieve unless they're literally just putting the projector straight on the floor, which if you have hardwood floors, then yeah, that's possible, but if you want a cinema sort of environment, then you really don't want hard floors. as I had in this room previously, because you're going to get way too much sound reflection, and your audio is just going to be really, really bad. I mean, I've noticed already that just by adding the carpet and having the rug on top of it, the audio, the existing audio that I already had in this room sounds a little bit better than it actually was before. So obviously those kind of things do make a big difference. Anyway, that's it for this particular video. If you haven't already done so, please do subscribe and hit that notification bell. I am going to have a lot more videos coming on the setup, the projector, the screen, as well as the audio system. So hit that notification bell, that way you'll be notified whenever I drop any new videos. And I'd really appreciate if you also give this video a thumbs up and share it with as many people as you can. Anybody that might be interested in ultra short throw projectors. I believe I'm one of the first people, consumers on YouTube that has actually purchased this projector with their own money. So, and anybody in Europe, you're definitely going to want to watch the video that I do, the dedicated video on the projector itself, because it is quite different to the American model. Other than that, thanks very much for watching.